Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here again. Today, I'm really excited, and we are here with all these galactic goddesses. Oh my gosh, look at you. I feel so excited to be talking about, a lot about what's going on with our, I don't know, ascension, I guess you want to call it, and what's going on in the world right now and in the universe pretty much, because we're all affected by everything. So, thank you everyone for being here, all you ladies here. I would to start, I'd like to just go around the room and if you could introduce yourself to the audience, and I'll start, Lisa, with you. Lisa, will you go first, please?
Sure. Yes, so I think I'll just read what I've recently written. It's on my website as well. Currently, I combine a colorful array of tools that are individually appropriated to help people develop more loving ways of living. This can be expressed through movement, voice, frequency shifts that I help with to accommodate more free-flowing and willful ways to create a more uplifted life. And that includes where we're going and some of the things that we'll talk about. The helpers or the beings that I work with have been very consistent in calling themselves warriors of love. And so a lot of times that's what I'll go by is Lisa Love Warrior. And it's my process has been very deeply ingrained in what love really is in this world, and especially right now. So
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. Shauna, I see you next on the screen. Will you go next?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Sharon. Shauna L. Francis. I'm a channel. I am an author. I am a spiritual guidance counselor, really, at this point in my world, focused on the ascension and helping others awaken to their absolute true beauty, nature, love, light as an infinite soul. I am channeling the Galactic Federation of Light most of the time here. Recently, I've worked with the Pleiadians. Archangel Metatron's a big guide for me. Whomever wants to come in, Galactic Council. So galactic in nature. I was in marketing for 25 years and had a major awakening here about 2.5 years ago, and everything changed in my world. And so here I am. I'm so happy to be here talking about galactic stuff. It's very exciting times. ShaunaLFrancis.com is my website. I do one-on-one sessions as well.
Great. Thank you, Shauna. Kendra, I see you next on the screen. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Kendra Jonas. I channel a fifth dimensional being named Melody, but I also channel a being that I call the voice of creation, who provided me with 7 principles of I am that became chapters from my book. The 7 principles are tools to kind of help us remember who we are, to get us back into 0 point, kind of this neutral zone, like who are we when our ego doesn't tell us correctly who we are. Who are we when the world is falling apart and everybody's lost their way? So it brings us back to the 0 point, aligns with all of our chakras so that we can remember our true potential and our true infinite power and our multidimensional nature, which is so important. So many of us are stuck in this matrix because we've forgotten who we are and how powerful we are and the access that we have to our multidimensional nature. So I see that right now as being sort of the prominent tool that's come out of the principles that's really kind of like useful right now once people kind of step out of all of this what do you call it, like diversity, not diversity, but the trouble that everybody's in, the obstacles, the going up against each other and all the division. Once people kind of realize that we're really all on the same team, that we're all really fighting for the same thing, which is truth. It's just that some people think the truth is one side and another side thinks it's on the other side, but we're all really, humanity is really trying to evolve into the same direction. It's the small percent that is trying to oppress. And so once the awakening happens and we start realizing that we're all on the same team, that's when I think people like us are going to be like so on the forefront. We're going to be so needed more and more. And it's already starting to happen. So this group right here is amazing. I mean, coming together like this, joining together and having the same foresight of what we all want, it's really the same thing, you know? So.
Thank you, Kendra. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Galactic Ashley.
Hi.
Hi.
So I am Galactic Ashley, and I channel divine guidance for star seeds, connecting them to their star families and galactic lineages. And I use light language frequencies and work with your cosmic connections to facilitate high frequency healing transmissions and encoded activations. I'm also a facilitator and teach 4 10-week courses called Galactic Guided Intensives that are throughout the year. And the next one that's coming up is called Remembering Through Art and Creativity. And it starts this month in just a few days. So I work primarily with the Dragon Consciousness and the Aeon Collective and the Arcturians when I'm just working by myself. But I mostly one part of my mission and purpose here is to connect people to their galactic families to help them remember and to be able to anchor those energies here on the planet at this time.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And so the topic of this chat here today is galactics, galactic energy, um, that type of thing. And maybe if I could just share a little bit about how I connected to what I feel is my galactic heritage, right? Okay. 20 years ago, I went through a quickening, and I've talked about this a few times in some of the videos. But at that point, when I started opening up and through that very intense time, I started remembering, because we start, when things start getting out of the way, all the blocks that we have, right? I remembered that that my home of planetary systems was in the Pleiades. And so, not that that's my only home, obviously, because I'm here on Earth too now, but that was one awareness that I resonated with the most and felt that was my last incarnations in the higher dimensions. And so these beings started helping me through my a really tough time what I was going through with bringing stuff up from my galactic heritage and remembering all the way back to Atlantis and beyond. And so that brings me to what I'd like to talk about now, and that's kind of about our galactic heritage, because we're not taught any of this in school or in our history books or anything like that. Basically we're taught, okay, we maybe come from Adam and Eve type of deal. And but what I understand, what I was remembering, and I think it's all remembering, right? Would you ladies agree, rather than being taught? It's just removing the veil.
It's almost like having a conscious awareness of this idea. And then once you kind of, oh, okay, I have an awareness of this, then the remembering can come. But it's kind of like somebody has to kind of say, hey, remember this, about this. And then it's like, okay, then the memories start coming.
Right. Yeah. We get triggered, just like we get triggered the other way. We get triggered,
Yes.
in a good way too, where things start coming. We might get a book or something like that. Like, oh, that makes so much sense. Then things start flowing, right? So I remember that that I actually remember being a soldier in the Galactic Wars, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, as I started opening up to all these energies and having this really intense quickening. And then I learned or remembered slowly that we're caught in this matrix, right? Where these beings, and what I understand is they're some Orion beings that broke through our universal or galactic matrix and enslaved our planet, right? And that's when we've been caught in this lower dimensional matrix for a long time, and we reincarnate as slaves, whatever you want to call it, to these beings. Now, we're not taught that. We don't, that's not something that they want us to know.
Not even close.
Exactly. So if you ladies could, maybe take a turn and give me your take on that. Is that anything that you've noticed or understand or had any experiences with that can give some information on for our audience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as we become more awakened to our total whole self, and realize that we're not just this little fragmented aspect that's stuck here in 3D, when we start to become more aware, we do start to have memories. Our past life memories become more clear. We start to have connections more with our higher self, and we recognize who that is, or who's that other part of us that's giving us signals and synchronicities and numbers, symbols that come up, and we're like, wait a minute, I think this is a message. All that stuff starts to become more clear, and I think that that's what connects us, to our extended star families. And there's a lot of star kids here. Dolores Cannon calls it the third wave. There's like 1, 2, 3 waves, which is basically kind of like generations. The first generation, the first wave is like the baby boomer ages, where they sort of are the way showers that they started to get the ball rolling. And then I guess our generation here, I mean, we're all kind of similar in the similar age group here, are the ones who are more like the broadcasters that are here to kind of anchor in the light and anchor in the energy and start to make things happen. And then the third wave is the star seeds, or the hybrid kids that are here. And sorry, I'm blank for a second here. Mary Rodwell wrote the book about the new human, who talks about the starseed kids. And they have these incredible talents and memories of their past lives. Some of them come here speaking another star language, and it's a true actual language that it is, that you can't just make up. I mean, it's an actual language that they're able to speak and relate with, and a lot of them have full memories of their past lives too. So I think just coming to this awareness, there's no stopping us from being able to have conscious contact with beings from other galaxies, and also having memories of how we're linked and how our DNA is actually activated and linking to these beings on other galaxies and things. So it's all starting to happen right now.
Yes.
I think it's muted. Oh, there.
Does anyone else have a take on that? Shauna, I see you forming something.
Well, it's just, I love all that, as Kendra was saying, and, these 3 waves, and understanding truly, as, all of us on, this Zoom call, and those that are drawn to these messages and really resonating with them. You're likely a starseed. You're likely here. You volunteered to come to this planet. And I'll tell you, I really tripped out when my team, my etheric guides kind of, the idea here is that we are the aliens on Earth. I was floored at that concept when I first heard it. Again, that's a trigger, right? Mm-hmm. We come from all over the place. We are multidimensional in nature. And the next thing that really trips me out is that, all of these lifetimes could be happening all at the same time, all at once. So in some of my one-on-one sessions, we're meeting beings, my clients are meeting beings who are them, on a ship as they are here on Earth, and they're working together, and they see that very clearly. So it's amazing. And, I guess in my background personally, Sharon, it was, I understand I actually have a long and storied past with reptilians. And, part of my mission here on Earth is to help emancipate negative reptilian energy from the planet. And again, that was a shocker to learn that. But again, as Kendra said, this is all starting to happen now. We are awakening here. We are remembering, and it's important. And it's important that we're here to help other people who are having strange things happen, who are starting to remember their lives as well, their multidimensionality.
Yeah. We're here for each other. I want to touch a little bit on what you said about, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, that information about being a starseed. I remember 20 years ago, I was actually in Cancun. We were talking about Mexico, because Shauna's in Mexico. And I was sitting there with my partner at the time and another couple, and we're just talking, having beer, drinking beer, and eating Mexican food. And I said, yeah, we've all come from other planets. And they looked at me like I had 4 heads. Yeah. And my boyfriend at the time even said, why did you say that? I was so embarrassed. I'm like, whoa, well, because it's true. And 20 years later is pretty common knowledge now, you know.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. That's right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the conspiracy theorists or the weird ones are really the ones who had it right, you know, and it's still going to be like that. You're going to see more and more the mainstream starting to adopt kind of what we've been saying.
Mhm.
Yep.
It all becomes mainstream. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Lisa, Ashley, do you have anything that you'd like to share about galactic history, or and what you're, you know?
I just
Yeah.
want to be really blunt right now and say
Yay.
that I'm still really nervous about it. Every time I work with somebody, every time I get interviewed or have to be online to channel, I get really uncomfortable. And I think part of it, I know part of it is that there's still a part of me that's learning to believe
Mhm.
that this is everything that you guys have already said is a part of who I am and is a part of my experience. But I think there's some of the beings that I work with they're coming from a future timeline, and they call themselves the Wolverines. But they've also brought in the word maverick, and I didn't look the word up for a long time. They give me a lot of words that I don't always know the full definition of, so I'm constantly like seeking how these words match up with what's going on in my life. And when I discovered what a maverick was, I was just like, what? Like, I'm being asked to be a person that brings forward information that is, the way I describe it is like slightly skewed, because it does in, I want to say interpret, but it's interpreted through what we know already. So through the history of our, any system that we've already had. So my foundation is in yoga, and suddenly I was being asked to stop teaching yoga, and I was just like, okay. And then, fast forward a few months, I woke up one morning and I thought, what am I doing? I loved teaching yoga. And they said, well, you gave it up so easily.
Ah.
So as I'm describing that, it's making me realize that I was ready to sort of shrug off what I thought I already knew, so that I could be given information that's coming from, and they combine the two Wolverines and Mavericks and they call themselves the Malverines. But given my other lifetimes and this particular life, I also have a great fear of speaking up for what I know and what the information that I've been given, for fear of being attacked for it. And I do have memories of lifetimes, and I've been shown, and I've drawn some of them, where we've tried and failed to bring the source of love to this planet before. And here I am again. I'm this person that even as a yoga student, I would hear some of my teachers talk about being in the heart. And it actually took me a really long time to feel and be honest with myself that I wasn't even really feeling my heart, because it was trapped by grief. It was trapped by fear of being hurt. It was trapped. So that's part of why I'm here to talk about love anytime I get the opportunity. Is it's about how to interpret what love really is and how it comes to us sometimes, because it doesn't always look like a love affair or being in bliss with another person necessarily, because as we all know, a trigger can be part of it's part of what love is doing. It's like love is pointing the way, and it provides for us a situation that will give us a moment that's like, and then those of us that know, we can start evaluating that and turning it in, or turning it over, or turning it up, however you want to look at it. And all of this is, I wrote down, I am a heart rearranger. And I didn't say that because I haven't even said that out loud yet, but it is something my guides, or I've channeled probably for about just a month now. So some of the energy work that I've been doing, not just through the Pleiadians, because the Pleiadians helped me with my heart, but is helping people possibly like me, this person who was in this, sort of a spiritual community and still wasn't even really very aware that I wasn't even in my heart, so I can help people open that space, and the ones who are being and waiting and kind of grasping at it right now.
Right. Well, I mean, love is who we are. Love is the only thing that's real. Everything else is an illusion. It's just, my sister and I were talking today about this play, this movie. It's just so exciting. Yeah. Right. We get attached, of course, but, when you realize that it's all an illusion, and it's just, we just come here. I keep having dreams. I have dreams a lot of sitting in an audience watching a play, and I'm in the play, and I'm watching myself in the play, and then I'm watching myself sitting in the audience watching myself in the play. So that's a lot of perspectives of dimensional selves, right? And so that's kind of what it is. Wouldn't you agree? Ashley, Galactic Ashley? Or not?
Yeah. I think as far as my galactic lineage or heritage goes, and I'm grateful for it, right? Because I'm actually, my galactic family is not from this universe, right? So it's not like I have a planet to point to, or I can say, oh, that. And I'm grateful for that because it helps me when I'm doing private sessions or when I'm connecting with people to remember that there are more grains of sand on Earth than there are stars in the sky, and that humanity hasn't even uncovered hardly anything about what is out there. So it means that I'm open to, beings that are coming in that, and I just did a session last night that they can't tell me they can show me the planet that they're from. They can show me all kinds of things. And then they can say, we're undiscovered by you. And so I'm grateful for that. And in the same way, if we're out on the fringes, then I feel like I'm out a little bit farther on the fringes because I don't necessarily even have something to look with. So it's my personal galactic story is that my galactic family brought me through what I identify as the dragon gates, or this dragon consciousness. So these beings, and they basically handed me over to the Arcturians. So I consider the Arcturians my host family. And when I've been shown past lifetimes, it's and why I have all these star codes and this light language information, it's like I lived a ton of shortened lives on a lot of different planets. So it's almost like I did a Peace Corps tour on a ton of different planets to gather information, and it was really emotional and sort of amazing. But I don't feel linked in, and this always kind of bothered me. I'm like, why don't I have all this information about these galactic wars and all these things? And it's because it's like they handed me off to the Arcturians, and in a way the Arcturians were responsible for protecting me, and I'm saying the soul me, right? Not just me down here. And so I really find that, and I completely obviously empathize with this longing for home and how it can feel dense here. But I really believe that the purpose of connecting and uniting with our star family, or allowing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to have these memories, is to remember that we're really never separate from home, and that we are not a cosmic orphan. And I remember the first time I heard that, it was really emotional. I'm like, right, I'm not a cosmic orphan. I chose to come into this universe to come and do something, right? Or, be something, whatever, and not in the ego sense. But so, and really, when we connect with these we'll call them star seed aspects, or our galactic self, it's really activated through the heart space, and we begin to a process of integration and ultimately unification. And I think that that's the really like more of the difficult part is actually unifying the energies. Like we talk a lot about integration, but like unification is like a whole other level that we're being asked to do inside the body, because living as our galactic self really restores the divine human DNA, allowing us to transform consciousness through the body and co-create like this galactic legacy here on the planet. Because by doing that, what we're doing is we're activating the human DNA, which is already divine, right? Which you could go back and say, like, the Anunnaki basically took our sovereignty out of the DNA, which is why so many of us are wired to not claim our power or our truth, or like, no, I can't speak. And so like really it's like very grounding if you align with being galactic, to allow yourself to, what I say, ground up, to allow yourself to connect and realize like what your greater mission or purpose is, so that you can live as that, so you can actually bring your home here. And then you start transmuting and creating this process where your crystalline DNA becomes activated, and then you're like living as your multidimensional self, and then the unification process starts. And that one, it can be really tricky. And so for me personally, it's almost like you have these memories and your heart is being asked to expand, and feel like these unconditional love feelings, while at the same time feeling loss, like really extreme senses of loss, like at the same time, because we are in a universe that is based and built on polarities. And so these are really hard concepts to do, and then to bring those into your body and to allow them to exist, understanding that like in many ways, like you aren't going to be consumed by those, that it will pass through, and that there's like a greater purpose of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Ashley. I, I'm glad you brought up DNA, because that was one thing I wanted to talk about too, is how we, what is a galactic being, and how do we, how do we connect, or how do we understand and know that? And my take on it is, and I'd love to get everyone's take, is through our DNA, right? And like you said, well, not through our DNA, but is as we, as our DNA is ramped up and healed, and we're activating more of our DNA, then we realize more of who we are in the universe, as we connect, closer and closer to source, or go within, because everything's an illusion anyway. So as we go within, in our DNA, that DNA 95%, they call it junk DNA, is activated, is my take, is when how we remember our true selves, our true uh, beings. And when we move through that process of remembering our galactic self, and remembering our archangel self, and remember, all these parts of us, which we all are a part of, because we're all one, we are source, we are light. And so as we move through our healing process, our remembering process, we remember that part of ourselves. And that's my take on galactic beings, and how we connect with them. And I wanted to mention something. I think galactic Ashley, you said something about that they're here, right? I remember when I was a kid, I have a memory of my star seed father, my extraterrestrial father. And I was on the ship, and as I'm leaving the ship, and I'm crying, I'm a little girl, I'm like, I don't want to go, I don't want to leave. And he does this motion, like we're not going anywhere, we're just in a higher, faster vibration, we're still here, because there is no here or there, right? But we're still here. You just don't see and feel us because of the physical senses that we have here. So what's everyone's take on the galactic being premise, and what that's all about, if you don't mind?
I think I want to jump in, because as I was listening to you talk, I was looking at your background, and one of the first experiences that I had when I was being asked to look at my own heart was, that's what I saw. I saw like my heart was an entire universe in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like I mean, I was thinking a lot of different things because in the beginning of what you were saying, I was remembering just for myself that, I lived a very physically oriented life. But what I'm working on now and what I'm helping other people work on is how, we might embody these things, but then our mental patterns start to inhibit the so I can have the DNA change inside of me, and I can, have my moments where, I'm feeling really in touch with all of that. And then right away, my mind will come in. And it's like this barrier and this warfare within me that's having to readjust to the truth of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But to go and lean a little bit more towards what you were asking in terms of what does it mean to have a galactic being in my life. I was talking to some friends the other day, and they said a trusted source, and that really resonated because I call them my spirit guides. I've been
Mm-hmm.
calling them my spirit guides for a really long time, I guess. I don't know, several years now. And when I heard a trusted source, I was like, oh, I think I've just graduated into a different way of naming them, because they're a consciousness to me. And done a little bit of studies in consciousness. And I have a lot of an appreciation for them being, when I visualize them in my mind, because I don't always see them as they are like well, I'm hearing the word a vortex, but it's like this massive amount of light and consciousness that sort of brings itself down a little bit or concentrates it in order to communicate with me. And a lot of my communication is telepathic, which I would imagine that's a lot of people versus just, our other senses. So I guess it kind of comes down to a consciousness and an intelligence that is coordinating with me and collaborating with me to bring my frequency into a state that helps me with everything that we've already been talking about, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah.
I would just add to that too. I mean, as you're both saying, we are all one and everything is energy. And you talked about DNA too, Sharon, and such. I mean, I think part of this is just more energy, higher frequency, more light. We're going through this ascension. We're starting the whole ascension process. And, the Galactic Federation of Light is saying soon humanity will know themselves as just another galactic species, a part of a larger galactic family,
Mm-hmm.
right? And us to be able to be in this moment, in this place where we've been sequestered, quarantined, and unaware at a density level, really who and what we are, and now to be awakening to this and to be shown, and like what Lisa was talking about, the guidance, the consciousness, this intelligence that's coordinating with us on the ground. We're boots on the ground right now, helping us move through, this knowing and this understanding that we are galactic in nature. So it's, I mean, it's an incredible time. So I'm very thankful, and I'm still awestruck and a little bit like Lisa, a little scared of what this really means, but it's just so fun and going with the flow, and people like you who are, we're all in this together, right? We are kind of standing on a precipice here, looking over the edge at something very unknown for all of us. And it's truly incredible.
It is. Yeah. It's such an honor and exciting to be here at this time. And I totally feel we chose to be here for what's going on now. You know what I mean? What's happening now. That's why we're here. And that's my take anyway, or how I feel about my life and why I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lisa, I just want to commend you for you being so open and honest about the fear factor in all of this, and I think all of us can relate. I mean, if we're totally honest with ourselves, we can all relate, to that sort of being at the forefront, or it absolutely interferes with me. I mean, it absolutely it's my struggle as well. Is recognizing it and trying to figure out how to transmute it, how to transform it, how to work with it, because it's always there. It'll come up, in different ways. And I think that the key is that it's recognizing it and not allowing it, and knowing that we're separate from it, that it is sort of the false evidence appearing real. And once we really are aware of that we are not our fear, that we're not going to be victim to it, when we allow ourselves to step away from it and just move through it anyway, it's like, wow, that wasn't so bad, that was nothing. Why was I aligning with that in the first place? So that it's almost like a blessing. I mean, it's uncomfortable and it's always kind of in the background, but it certainly has helped with my ability to ascend and be able to channel and to empower myself and to figure out ways to work with it. And just to know that, I mean, because I've had so many contact experiences with so many different beings. I mean, because whenever you, I don't know if this has happened for you guys, but when you have contact with beings of a higher dimension, it really threatens the lower dimensional beings that are here trying to keep us detached from breaking through that. They don't want that. So I don't know, when I was writing my book, I had so many attacks. My manuscript was lost so many times, and it was, I'd print things out. And if I hadn't printed them out, I would have lost so much material. It was unbelievable. I'm a web designer and I have computer files that are so excellent. I do a good job of maintaining my files. So there was no explanation for that kind of thing. So there was so many attacks that kept happening. And it was just a way of having to work with it. And it's like, okay, so what can I do to empower myself? And realizing that you're not attacking yourself. This truly is kind of this little war that's going on, in our everyday lives. And it's a matter of recognizing it, knowing that is not you. You are more powerful than that. Light is more powerful than dark, but we need the dark to be able to ascend into the light, because it shows us like where we really are. It's sort of like this compass. And it's like, okay, I'm going to be able to work with that because I recognize now how powerful I am, that, oh, there's ways to get around this. And when I do, it's like, oh, I can move into the next level of my consciousness. And so it becomes almost like this necessity, even though it's uncomfortable. It's kind of weird, but that's how it's been for me too. It's been definitely a tool.
Nice. Thank you, Kendra. Yeah, it's beautiful.
I was just gonna say, I do a lot of work with New Earth, and I'm not saying that the Earth that we see today is separate from New Earth, because it's still the same consciousness, right? But it's always a reminder that if we're on any other planet and we're looking at Earth is a star, right? It's like Terra, it's a star nation. And so when we remember that, it really, a lot of it comes down to discernment, and how you discern is going to be a lot about just who and how and where you are. And so sometimes I think we shift through different beings, and it's like we're handed off until we can handle different vibrations. And I mean, reptilians, they're star beings too, right? So I tend to think a lot about discernment in language, and so I tend to use the word galactic versus ET versus alien. There's nothing wrong with ETs, but I feel like ETs sometimes have crafts and they're showing up, and it's just, we have a very different exchange, and I tend to not channel ETs, and there's nothing wrong with them. It's not like they're not benevolent or malevolent or what. Well, sometimes they are, right? It doesn't really matter. But it all really comes down to choice. And I think this goes along with what Kendra was saying. It's sort of like where and how you're aligning in the moment and kind of being aware of that. But also we have so much information and stuff that is, well, one, in our cellular structure that contains every lifetime that we are currently living, which is all past, future, and parallel, right? So like literally, if you want to talk about the Akashic records, it's like in our cellular structure. So as we're trying to access information, a lot of information is in our subconscious. So I feel like what we're seeing today in the the human collective is really an exposure of stuff that's coming up from the collective subconscious level that's like really coming up to be healed. So if you want to take it to a personal level, recently I had like an attachment, like an entity in my system, and I was like, what? Come on, dragons, right? And they're like, well, you've been asking about how to help people access information in their subconscious like differently, right? Because they showed me one way and I was like, that's not going to work for like 95% of the people, but I love that way, thank you, like that works for me, but what can I like teach? And then they showed me another way and I was like, okay. And then there's this third thing happened, and they said, well, it's like you wanted to know like other ways to access your subconscious, right? So if we remember that we're all like, we're in basically operating the laws of frequency, and our whole intent contains that which we are conscious of and that which is like been buried in us, that those are the frequencies that we're sending out. So anytime we have an attachment or something, it's not our fault. It's just that there was a frequency within me that let it attach. So then when I healed that, it healed these other frequencies that I was not aware of. So they're like, you're welcome. And I was like, okay, thank you. Because, you know, so it's kind of like our perception of how we're having these experiences. Oftentimes we label them as negative and they become fearful, when really in a lot of ways, and I'm not talking about trauma of like childhood, they will explain that in like little v and capital V. Like you are a victim in the moment when somebody is doing a power over you. Like in that moment, you are a victim, but you don't want to be the capital V victim where you carry that mentality through your life after. And it's not, you know, everybody's going to grieve and process traumas differently. So this isn't about saying like it's your fault, but I mean, these things are still in our they're in our cell structure, right? So when we're going through DNA and when we're transmuting stuff inside ourselves, like we can't and nobody here does this, but like spiritual bypassing is a thing. Like there is a shadow part and it is within all of us, and we need to be willing to shine a light on it and to heal it and to do something about it so that we're actually literally transmuting stuff within inside ourselves. And I'm always reminded about like soul alchemy, and you must, and I really feel like this is what's happening in the collective, is you have to go through a volatile state. Like you have like the boiling point, right? In order to get the lead to shift into gold. Like we have to experience that volatility like within us, and it's really uncomfortable, but we have to walk through that. And so when we have these soul purposes here, oftentimes they align with challenges. So these challenges and these fears, we're being asked to walk through those doors because they align with our soul purpose. So if you've experienced trauma in your life, oftentimes that means that you're going to be healing trauma in others once you walk through your own traumas, because having a human and physical experience means that it's more than just empathizing with people. It really helps to actually have had that experience. So there aren't a ton of people out there that specifically focus on, for example, working with cancer, unless they have lost somebody in their life or they themselves have had cancer. So it's just, and these are just very broad examples, but I don't know how I went off on this, but it was sort of tagging off of
Right.
Kendra and Lisa. So
that's beautiful what you said. I mean, because you're talking about the yin and the yang, you know. I mean, we have this negative trauma that happens to us or whatever's blocking us. We can go around life and say, you know, this is horrible. I'm a victim. I don't think I'll ever be the same. And everybody's mean to me or whatever. But if you're like, wow, I've got, you know, I overcame this. Maybe I can help other people overcome this too. Maybe, you know, it starts to open up the creative mind and our potential that maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe I can do something with this. And that's a huge thing that you just said, because it applies to everything in our lives. You know, it transforms the victim mentality into the empowered individual. And from there, because you can't ascend into the fifth dimension or wherever people believe that this is leading to when we're in that victim state. It's impossible.
Yeah.
We have to be able to transmute that within ourselves somehow. And what you said is exactly perfect. I mean, that's the key.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah, I know that when I was going through my quickening, one thing my guides had helped me with, they call themselves my mentors. I call them my guides, my dudes, my peeps. Uh, so was that because I'm like, gosh, why did life have to be so freaking tough, And why do I, because I started having memories of, past lives and all this kind of stuff that were just so hard. And what they explained to me was, like you were saying, Ashley, is that I have these experiences and we have these experiences to help us be able to have that empathy within us when we work, because when we start working with people, we'll understand what's going on with them because we've had these experiences, and we can totally, like you say, have that frequency within us to be able to connect with that person on that energetic level. Yeah, and help them in that space. That's awesome. Thank you. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, I thought we talked a little bit about the matrix. I think it's important for people to know that we we don't live, we exist in a matrix. Okay. I know this because I saw the matrix with my own eyes, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing, and in a grocery store. And everything just disappeared. I was just shopping for groceries, and the reality around me disappeared, just totally faded away. And I could see the blue and green grid lines of the grid, the matrix. And it lasted about 2.5, 3 seconds, which is totally long enough for me to know that what I'm seeing is what I'm seeing. Yeah. And so I started having dreams where I was trying to get through these grids. And I could hear the voice go through it, get through the grid, get through the grid, higher, get through the grid. And I realized that we exist in a matrix. And of course, not of course, but I've done some plant medicine in my life, and that enforced it even more because I saw, and with that, I saw the beauty of the matrix at a different level. It was just so gorgeous. So how can we help people maybe understand how to maneuver through this ascension process or their life or anything like that, with understanding that this is a matrix, it's an illusion? Does that make any sense? Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I know, like, the Galactic Federation of Light has just really drilled into, through my channelings of the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, that truly this is an illusion and that we are in choice. So it's one thing to understand that this is an illusion and our soul we're stopping by here. We have a limited time here to learn some things, to experience some things, to burn off some karma, but truly it's a shared collective consciousness. It's completely an illusion. And I like your metaphor, Sharon, that you used earlier, which is, we're in a play. I feel like I'm the lead actor in a theater, stage, a play, and I don't necessarily know the script or what's going on, but somebody does. And we're all playing these roles with each other. And, everything truly is an illusion. And it gives you that freedom to realize you're not the big V victim, right? You're not just here by happenstance with things happening to you, but you have chosen to be here to experience these things, to evolve as a soul. You're an infinite soul of love and light. And you're stopping here it's like the school of hard knocks here on earth. And that's why it's so darn hard. It's super dense. And we knew that going in. We came anyway, especially right now with the Ascension. And it's all those exciting things we talked about that helps keep this world, this life, our experience in perspective. That's what I feel like the illusion does. It helps me be grounded in a perspective here that's much more broad than, I'm going to go to work, I've got this job that I hate, I've got these bills to be paid, and all these worries and anxieties. It's like, no, step back, really see it from a broader vantage point.
Yeah. So moving from the 3D matrix into, I mean, we have to go through the 4D matrix to get to 5D matrix. And what I understand is the 4D matrix is when we're working on our stuff, and when we have these dark nights of the soul, and we are aware of all these, like we were talking about, all the shadows and things like that, is in 4D, is what I understand. So yeah, I like that, Shauna. That helps a lot. Does anyone else have any comments about the matrix and the construct that we have we've created for ourselves, and how to get be aware of it, and maybe get free of some of attachments to our daily life and things like that?
I can share something that happened to me. Well, it's very interesting what you experienced, going at the grocery store. I've heard somebody else talk about like that bleed through, where they were able to see the lines, and she described it as blue and green lines also. Very interesting that your situation was so much the same. And I can't remember what she was doing or how she started seeing that. But she was my son's girlfriend, a teenager, that told me this. So,
Wow.
very open, very
Wow,
not
yeah.
programmed. And so it was pretty genuine what she said. Anyway, I think that what's happens is that sometimes that we think that we can only make change from our physical perspective. So we're trying really hard, like to work on ourselves, or we want to change people out here, because then we think, well, that will fix it. So we forget that we're energetic beings, we're beings of pure conscious energy, and that we have access to the ethereal plane all the time, anytime we want. And when we work from that perspective and do like a top-down effect, it's a lot more powerful. It's like the manifestation principles, you visualize what you want. Everything has to start with a thought first. We visualize, we intend, we put our heart energy into it. We show gratitude and appreciation for what we already have, even though we may not already have it. But it's that alignment with that, with our energy, that's gonna shift the matrix. And when I was when I was working on my book, and I got the download of the 7 principles, it wasn't just that. It was, I kept having visits by the voice of creation, and he kept showing me each thing. He kept showing me through experience what each principle meant. And so the second principle, I am whole, I am one. It was the one was the chapter I was trying to work on, and I was trying to decipher it. I was researching science and trying to make sense of all this. And then he'd come and visit me again, and he said to me one night, he said, "Do you want to experience all that is?" And to show me what that principle meant. And I said, I got really scared. And I go, no, I'll lose my identity. I won't be me anymore if I'm all that is. I can't do that. And he said, okay, respecting my free will, he said, well, you really won't lose your identity. You'll still be you, but you can experience all that is at the same time. And I'm like, okay. And I remember just really having to let go of that fear. And I was like, okay, I'm going to trust this. All right, show me what that is, what it is like to be all that is. And so all of a sudden, I'm fully awake in my bed when this happened. All of a sudden, everything just started spinning. And it was just spinning faster and faster and faster. And when I felt like I was spinning, but not getting dizzy, but just everything around me was spinning like a vortex. And I was seeing images of every living thing on the planet, in the universe, was what, like flashing around me as it was spinning. So I was in the middle of everything, and I could see faces of people from all over the world. I could see cells and grains of sand and animals and just everything, and plant life just moving and moving and moving faster and faster. And all of a sudden I'm floating in this suspended space, just floating there. And the most incredible silence I have ever heard. I'm sitting there, I'm aware of myself, but I'm in suspended animation or whatever, just floating, and silence is all around me. And I felt my presence in everything all at the same time. And it was the most blissful, unbelievably connective, unforgettable experience I've ever had. I guess it could be akin to a near-death experience in a way. And it happened in seconds. Like, it was so fast, and yet I experienced so much. So time wasn't even relative anymore. It was like timeless, and wow, I just realized that there is so little that separates us from our sense of individual self
to the awareness of oneness. There is so little that separates that. And so I think that it must be the matrix that you're talking about.
The personality self.
Right. Yeah, just the forgetfulness that we're more than just that personality self, that maybe even that is what the artificial matrix is believing that we are just one little personality. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, the ego self, the personality self that only wants to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a beautiful experience. Wow.
It was so life-changing. Yeah. And it's so hard to verbalize it. That's the best I can do, because you know how those things are. You're like, how do I ever share something like this?
You can't put those experiences into words for sure. Yeah,
right.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think you did a great job of explaining.
I thought so too.
I felt it.
Gave me goosebumps.
Oh,
yeah.
well, you all can relate, but I don't know if everybody can. And that's where the fear comes in, Lisa, you know, where we're like, oh, is anybody going to understand me? And I feel so weird in all of this, you know, so, but we're sharing the truth. I mean, these are true experiences. You can't make this stuff up.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
No.
I stopped worrying about people thinking I'm weird a long time ago, because now if they think I'm weird, I think they're weird, you know.
So there.
So there, yeah.
Sounds a lot like that. Feels very 0 point energy to me. What you are experiencing, the beings a lot will come through and talk about it's not about having attachment to your personality, but allowing your soul. And when they say soul, they mean like every experience that you have had, to bring that through you. Because when you allow your soul to come through, you are, because especially here, there seems to be this concept that in order to be in a collective, just a collective, not even the one of all that is, right? But just to be a part of a collective means you must lose yourself and everyone is the same, when really it's like the collective becomes more expansive and more powerful if you're actually bringing your soul purpose or your truth in through you, like your unique gifts, right? And you're sharing your what I call cosmic octave, or your home frequency. It makes the collective even that more powerful, because then you're all sharing that gift among each other, even though it's quote unquote yours from your soul's experiences. So I think it's really interesting. And I tend to think of the matrix more as like a grid system. And so messages that I've been getting about the grid system, and I'll just use the grocery store for an example, since that's where we started, is that in a lot of ways for a while, it's not like we're going to go, oh, here, and then, oh, we're on New Earth, or we have no bodies, right? Like, I don't think that's not happening. From my perspective, but that we're going to be experiencing third, fourth, and fifth densities within the same matrix, right? So the old paradigm, the fractured grid system is still going to be available. If you would like it, it is here. It is an option. And then there's other options too, right? So they really like to talk about how claiming your sovereignty, like daily even, and sovereignty I define as being self-mastered, accepting that you are self-mastered, you are divine, you are sovereign, and you are free, and freedom meaning that you live freely from the influence of others. It doesn't mean that you're right or that you're wrong, but that when you make conscious choices, even if they're simple, right? Where I'm not even talking about big choices here, that is what creates an energy field that will magnetize you to the ascension timeline. I'm just using it in quotes because that's its whole other complex thing. But also that you're going to be interacting with third, fourth, and fifth densities. And that even if you are primarily holding a fifth density within you, there's still third density things that are happening. And sometimes that just means paperwork. That means like literally taking an action to like tie up some things in your life, because I have been, or this is what has been coming through, is that we're being asked to really draw in and to call back our power where it is, because these are going to be this is going to be a bumpy road. And so we don't want to be like, have our energy kind of like out, like in this grid system and this grid system and that grid system. But at the same time, we cannot assume that our truth or what is right or wrong for us is the same for someone else. So as far as the grocery store, so when everybody was buying all kinds of things off of the grocery shelves, I went to the grocery store and I looked, and there was like no bread, right? And I was like, what? And and I'm gonna buy weird gluten-free bread, and I'm out in like a smaller town, so it's not like there's a ton of options. But I looked, and there was the exact kind of bread that I always buy is there, and I had the same experience for the milk. And so I'm in there asking, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like everything I need is here, but there's like nothing here. And they're like, well, welcome to co-creating. And I'm like, oh, but that doesn't mean I look at the lady next to me and I'm like, her bread's not there, right? Like her vibration must be really bad. And it's because this is an example, because she's a mother of 3. She doesn't need the bread. She needs the flour, because she needs to go home and have a project to teach her kids so they have something to do. So we can't always project or say like, oh, well, you can co-create whatever you want. If you're holding a 5 density, then you should have stuff in the grocery store, because what is there that is meant for me is meant for me. What is there that is meant for you is meant for you. But we can still be holding the same vibration. It just might look different. And I think that that's what we forget. And then I feel like this is sort of what's happening in the spiritual community, is people are starting to take sides on things. And that is like a very, I would just be aware, be careful about going extreme, right? And I'm not saying choose apathy either. And I'm not saying don't feel things. Like, you absolutely need to feel things and have things come up. But as far as like the grid or the matrix is concerned, is I feel that there are a lot of grid systems on Earth. A lot of them are coming up. Not all of them are in the Earth's crust, but they're actually like, there's like a solar grid that's been activated and a lot of things. And so we have grid systems, meridians, chakras, and energy fields in our bodies. So aligning those consciously with grids that you're aware of on this planet can be really beneficial. And even with working with the, like, we're really a reflection of the Earth's body, right? And she's on an ascension timeline. We're on her timeline, and she's slowed her ascension. Otherwise, we'd all be dust. Right? Because she doesn't need to like wait around, but she also doesn't want to be like, she wants those to like come along.
She's waiting for us.
Yeah, she's literally waiting for us. So it's like we can heal ourselves, work on our grid systems that are like within us, and it's like we will be like energetically magnetized to the appropriate grid that is for us, right? So I tend to think of the ascension timeline like a rope, right? It has tons of little vines and lines on it, right? And they're twisted. So I might attach to one of those and get on, but how I am attached or magnetized to it might be different than someone else, but we're still all on it, right? It just looks different. So I always invite people to invite the frequency of truth into them, which means that you have to be able to look and be willing to see and to be able to see clearly. And your truth might be different than my truth. And I'm not really even sure there is a capital T truth. Right? But as long as we're constantly shifting and moving and being willing to see the truth in the moment, then I feel like this is the best thing that we can do, and just honor that we're going to be in a mixed up mush pot of 3rd, 4th, and 5th density in the same space. And then this is why sometimes we experience neighbors moving, or why we move like geographically to a different place and things start shifting, is because they're just not aligning, but we're not telling people to move. It's just sort of happening.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what we're dealing with now, is a mixed match of 3rd, 4th, 5th density experiences and also situations, for sure. Yeah. And to me, in my mind, I've learned to recognize what frequency, not that it matters, but my mentor has helped me recognize what frequency I'm in that moment in time. And it has everything to do with how I feel and what my thoughts are. If I'm in fear mode, if I'm, worrying and just not really in a good place or in a negative space, then I'm in 3D. right? And so, they've helped me gauge what frequency I'm in by just listening to my thoughts and also paying attention to my emotions. And then that helps me be aware of where I'm at, because we attract where we're at. And I don't want to attract any more, fear or negativity or
Right.
all that crappy stuff. I'm done with
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
so it helps me be aware of if anything comes my way, if I have any challenge, if I'm driving down the road and somebody cuts me off and I'm like, I'm gonna get him, or her or whatever. And then I have to like, oh, wait a minute. I'm just connecting to that person. They're in a hurry and they're stressed. So I don't want to be in that space. And then that
Perfect.
takes me a minute. But yeah.
I would
Thank
like
you,
to
Ashley.
jump in with that
Sure.
part, because everything that everybody's talking about makes a lot of sense to me, and it just brings up my personal story about, well, first of all, I've never seen The Matrix in the way that you have and the way you guys are talking about necessarily. But I can say that the movie The Matrix definitely resonated with me when he comes out at the end and his whole body just breaks open and he becomes light. And I think that, going back to what Kendra said about, you said something about the top down, going from the top down. And I wanted to add to go down even more, because my personal experience has been so much that, even in the yoga community, and with friends and mentors and everything, there was a lot of talk, and it's a lot of thought, and it's information that we've gathered and that has come from here that's being basically kind of like regurgitated, to say that you guys are doing that, but this is what was happening to me. And then I became a part of the regurgitation process. Oh, this is all you have to do. But it started to really, like, I felt really unsettled by it all. For years, I was unsettled by what I was hearing because I didn't understand yet. And I guess I can say now that these future beings were probably like giving me these little dust particles or something, reminding me that what I'm here to do now is to also help people who can't quite, they don't have the strength or the power that's going on in their mind to change what's going on down here in their body, which is going to relate back to trauma and how we have attachments, and possibly even, if I can visualize the matrix, the lines of frequencies that are attached to us through our body. So what I've been given is, and I talk about it so much, sometimes it's like, I think people are going, she's talking about that stuff again. But it's, they call it the morphing process. So for me, I told myself all the years that I was in yoga that I didn't want to be angry and I didn't want to be depressed, because my dad was angry and my mom was depressed. And so I spent 25 years in the yoga community toning down, tempering these frequencies that I was carrying anyway. And then at the end of that, when it came to what's happening now, 2 or 3 years ago for me, it was like, oh, well, it's there anyway. So are you going to keep telling yourself that you don't want to be angry and then resonating at that frequency somewhere anyway? So what I had to go through was I had to go through undenying. I had to stop denying the fact that I was experiencing those things. Yeah. And so morphing is all about, like, the way that the process has been given to me is, first of all, to tap into my heart, tap into my third eye or my mind's eye, and then bring all of that together to the point where it's like there's a spontaneous, perfect clarification where I'm not tapped into the past, I'm not tapped into the future so much in any way, and it's perfectly clear, so that whatever is ready to come forward or comes up and comes forward, because my mind can't tell me what's ready to come forward. So I think I'm going to be working with people who have trauma, and you can't tell trauma to come up tomorrow just because you say, I'm ready for my trauma to come up tomorrow because it has to happen tomorrow because I have to do.
I have
Put
the
it on
day
the
off.
calendar.
Right.
I put it
I
on the
love it.
calendar, right?
But there's this whole like, I don't know the word that's trying to come through, like a churning is the word. And once the morphing of the body can happen, then the morphing of the mind's eye has to happen, because that's kind of what I was saying earlier about how when we can actually clear and get our body to resonate at a certain level, then the mind is what says, wait, you're crazy. There's nothing really going on right now. Like I'm not connecting to spirits that are telling me these things. I mean, I go through that periodically throughout the day where I'll be listening to my mom and we're watching TV or something. Then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, wait, for the last 2 years, I've been having telepathic conversations with galactic beings. So my mind is what starts to, my mind, it's almost like it has its own pathway, and it'll trigger me even when I'm not even like trying. So this might even go back to what Ashley was saying about the subconscious in some way. I'm not really sure because I'm still trying to figure this part out myself. But I do know that it ties into our energy. So for me, I have to learn how to shift my energy in order to shift what's going on up in here, versus changing how I think in order to shift what's going on down here. And that's why it's like so similar to what we've already been given, but it's slightly skewed. I think I said what I wanted to say.
I'm sure we all have a lot more to say. I just want to share a really quick experience that you said reminded me of it. When I was in a ceremony with some plant medicine, when I was in the moment, I was feeling really good, really good. And then as soon as I think about the past, I started feeling really yucky, nauseous, and bad. And if I think about the future, I'd feel anxious. So I realized that this is the moment is the only thing that's actually real, right?
Yeah.
All the other, it's just, and I think that helps us understand where maybe anxiety comes from and depression and all that, if we're constantly in the past or constantly worried about the future. That was a little message I got from that, one of those experiences. Yeah. Did everyone get to share their take on the grid matrix? And I can't remember.
Yeah.
Good? Yeah. Okay. So thank you, ladies, for being here. We'll go ahead and close. I really enjoy talking with you all the time. We'll have to do this more often.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So thank you, everyone, for watching us. Yeah, we hope you enjoy the conversation. So have a wonderful, wonderful day. And ladies, don't go away. I'm going to stop the recording. Have a wonderful day, and hope to see you, or you see us, whatever, again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.